This podcast is brought to you by Most Valuable Podcasts, leading the league in podcasting entertainment.
What's going on, Real MVPs? Welcome inside another edition of What's Your Fantasy? I'm Brandon Swanson. Across the table is Ricky Widmer.
I ain't afraid of no ghosts.
And Ricky's obviously in that spooky season. He's feeling it. He's getting all the feels.
You don't get it?
Nope.
Sam Darnold. He's seeing ghosts. I ain't afraid of no ghosts.
Completely forgot about it. Thank you.
There's
but
also,
I couldn't care less about the Jets, so I really forget about them.
Above the, do you see what they were, a fan flew above the Jaguar game, the Jaguar Jet game before pregame? No, it was a thing, and it said, Minshew's afraid of no ghosts. Minshew ain't afraid of no ghosts. So everyone's trolling Sam Darnold. The Jets hate that it hit the airways of ESPN because, like everyone says, when you play the Patriots, everybody is seeing ghosts.
So I'm really interested with that mic'd up all the time. I'm interested. What are they going to catch? Are they going to catch something that they don't actually want to catch?
The best is Josh Sitton because he was on the Pat McAfee show, and he even said, he goes, every single game, the center has a mic, and he goes, because Pat McAfee's like, there's somebody, it's like Snapchat. Somebody's got all those recordings. And Josh Sitton's like, man, if any of those got out, I'd be in trouble.
Well, yeah.
Like, sometimes like you're saying shit on the football field, and it's just like, it's like Pat McAfee said, you go and play football, and then normal Joes like us expect you to act cordially and normal when you're trying to rip each other's heads off on the football field.
Well, exactly. I mean, I don't expect them to be acting cordially on the football field. And as we found out last night, well, 2 nights ago when this airs, is that sometimes you're not always cordial in the baseball dugout either.
No, you're not. You're not. You're a coward sometimes.
A nice reference to Trey Turner, who is not too happy. Hey, Joe Torre, he's right over there. His head's down. Come on, he was right over there. He saw it.
He's got a point, though.
Yeah, he does.
He's got a point.
He does, but it's so funny that we waited all that time watching Game 6 for the umpire back in New York to read the rule back to the umpires at the game for them to go, all right, we were right. Out. I mean, it was really a rough play.
Last thing I'll say about it, because people are probably like, get to the fantasy at this point, but
I know.
Whatever,
it's our show.
The best thing about it is everyone on Twitter's like, oh, Jose Altuve was a little bit more inside the line than Trey Turner. Guys, the reason it's like that is it was a bad throw. If the throw was on target, we're not talking about Trey Turner is safe. It was because the throw was bad, he got in the way, and it's his fault for not getting it out of the way, not the guy who threw it bad.
That's exactly it. Well,
I think it was Bregman. Was it a Bregman throw?
I think it may have been.
Because it was from third, right?
I think it may have been, yes.
Okay.
But moving on. Before we do, though, if you want to, excuse me, a little burp. As Ricky would say, a little burpity burp.
A little burpy burp. That's how the sausage is made, my friend.
So before we move on, if you want to support this podcast, support this channel, head over to patreon.com/mostvaluablepodcast. You can support for just $1 a month or more. Certainly, we would appreciate that. But just $1 a month, you can help support this podcast and everything that we are doing here so you can see more great content each and every day. And now we are going to get into it. Across the table to Ricky Widmer to say how we did.
Yeah, we didn't do well. We lost. I was telling you already know we didn't do well. Thank you for acting like you didn't know.
Dick. We were going. This is for the. This is for the viewers.
So we
come on. You know they're acting on TV too. They already know what's happening.
Here's the bad thing. We lost 98.1 to 79. Ryan Tannehill had a good game. He had 19.4. Marlon Mack had 15. Julian Edelman had 19.8. Tyrell Williams had 15.1. Ricky, how did you lose? Even how did you lose when the other team, Team Josh, had Dak Prescott and Hayden Hurst on the bye? We lost to Mike Evans. Mike Evans had 31.8. If I take 20... I'm going to be conservative. I'll take 20, not 20 points. Like, he would have gotten more than 11 points. Let's say I'll take half of them away. I'll take 15 points away from him, would we have still lost? Probably by a couple, but it would have been more manageable. Also, Cooper Kupp had 28. Helped me in my personal league. I kicked the shit out of Mark Webber this week. From Mark Webber used to be a part of MVP. Kicked the shit out of Mark this week, but he hurt us in fantasy as we lose 98.1 to 97, and that makes the standings as they are right now. The division leaders are tied at 6-2 in the East, Top Cats and Ass Interference, and then tied at 6-2 in the West. Cleveland, Atlan Shores, and then Los Angeles, Nico de Taco. One of my favorite names. I hope Nico de Taco wins the league just because I like saying the name so much.
And then maybe we'll get him a Taco Bell gift card.
Maybe Nico de Taco. Maybe he'll steal a taco. Stealing a taco. Like, that was a thing where...
Are we stealing a taco tonight?
Maybe we do go to Taco Bell after this. But those are the 4 teams that are going to be in the playoffs if the season ended today.
Yeah, we're horrible. We're really horrible.
Better luck, like with our team, it's more like better luck next year. Yeah. I am already looking to next year with our team. I'm going to try to win each week. I'm going to set a lineup, but there's no hope. We lost. It's garbage.
It's real bad. It's real bad.
And by it's garbage, I mean we're garbage this year, and we're going to own it like champs. Yeah. The brand's like, no, we're not. We're not going to own it like champs.
We're bad. So, anywho, we're moving on to something that's not as bad as what we just had there. So, we're going to move on. The first topic that we have for you today, it is Tevin Coleman. So Tevin Coleman, he has really come out of his shell here in San Francisco. And I was worried about Tevin Coleman because while we knew he could really do some good things over in Atlanta, he was never going to be the number one guy in Atlanta. Probably looking at it now thinking, I wish he was. But, because Devonta Freeman has been such a bust this season. But Tevin Coleman, if you look at what he's done in his time, I know he was injured for a couple of weeks with the San Francisco 49ers to start the season, but from October 7th to October 27th, he has 5 touchdowns. He has 5 touchdowns in those games. He's carried the ball 71 times for 332 yards and 5 touchdowns. That's just on the ground, folks. That's just on the ground. He had 4 touchdowns this past weekend, 1 receiving. Ricky, this guy is outstanding, and if you don't have him, I'll be really surprised. But how much of an impact, really is he making on fantasy teams? And is Tevin Coleman going to be one of those guys that you ride for the rest of this season and who could potentially be a guy who wins you fantasy playoff games and maybe a championship? Could that be possible?
The way I see him the rest of the year is, to me, he's a fantasy matchup where he's either in RB2 or a flex spot situation for me, because as we're getting through this part of the year, most of these bye weeks are already getting, like, we've got the later ones that have to go, like, if you own a Dalvin Cook, obviously he's going to be an RB1 that you've got on your team that's going to be on the bye. We've got some teams like that, like the Chargers still have theirs. So if you have a Austin Eckler, he's going to be on the bye soon. A Dalvin Cook will be on the bye soon. So to me, he's one of those where, yes, he's in your starting lineup every week, and he's probably your RB2 at best. If not, depending on how stacked your team is, he's either that or the flex spot. And this, you can easily, in my mind, have seen this coming, because when I look back in his stats from Atlanta, yes, you look at last year and you're like, oh, it was his best year. But it was the first time he really got that starting role, because Devonta Freeman was injured last year, had 800 yards, had the most carries he's ever had in a Falcon uniform in a season at 167. I look back to 2016, though, because 2015 was his rookie year. Getting acclimated, only had 87 rushes. But that 2016 year, Kyle Shanahan was there in Atlanta during that time. He had 502 yards, 8 touchdowns on the ground, and if we go receiving, he had about 421 receiving and 3 total touchdowns. So, I mean, this is something where Tevin Coleman, he's showing that as long as he's paired up with Kyle Shanahan, he can do some special things. Because in 2016, the only reasons why those numbers weren't greater is because, A, he was only a sophomore he was a 23-year-old second-year pro, but also he was the backup to Devonta Freeman. He played 13 games, but never started a single one. Whereas now we're saying, hey, as he's been healthy, he's the starter. And the thing that bodes well for him is the rest of the running backs on this 49er team are not so healthy, which means more carries, hopefully, for Tevin Coleman.
So that was going to be my next question is, and yes, you're right. They're all questionable, I think, this week, the everyone behind Tevin Coleman. But how much do you think that does that presence hurt him at all, having Matt Breida, who we know can run the ball effectively and has, Raheem Mostert, who can even run the ball effectively and has done it, and then Jeff Wilson Jr. There's so many running backs on that roster and so many guys that, is it Tevin Coleman's really good right now because he's the hot hand and they're riding with the hot hand? But hey, if Matt Breida in a game, starts to go off, get a number of long runs, do we worry about that? Or do you think that Tevin Coleman's going to be the guy no matter who else might have a big play or anything, they want to run it through Tevin Coleman?
Yeah, I think there's always a little bit of a concern. Like you look at Matt Breida, it looks like he's pretty consistent. And when he's healthy, 11, 13, 8, and 11 have been the carries that they have gone to. You also look at Raheem and his carries. His are a little bit more fluxy, I'm going to say. We're 7, 4, didn't get a single carry against Washington, and then got 9 this past week against Carolina. To me, the one thing I look at is obviously Tevin Coleman is going to get his carries. He's going to get about 15 to 20 carries in a game. It's just what is he going to be able to do with those games? And this last game, he didn't have a lot, only had 11 carries, but he was able to do a lot with it. That's going to be a big thing for him, where if he's got those limited carries, because game situations are going to play into it as well. This is a team that has Jimmy Garoppolo and has weapon. Like now they just brought in Emmanuel Sanders to bolster that wide receiver core. They also have George Kittle that they can go to, although they don't like getting George Kittle in the end zone this year. It's going to be what can Tevin Coleman do when his number is called. And so far through 4 games while being back, really the only dud is that Washington game. But if I remember correctly, wasn't that the weird Washington game where it was like the weather was weird?
It was so
and they
rainy.
Were just running.
It was a slip and slide all over the place.
So what, 4 games and really one was an anomaly kind of a game? So like you look at it, 15-12 and then 35. I'm feeling good about Tevin Coleman moving forward, especially this week. They're going at Arizona.
Ricky, they being the San Francisco 49ers, just beat down Carolina Panthers, a good Carolina Panther team too. And that was the first loss for Kyle Allen. It was the first game that Jimmy Garoppolo had Emmanuel Sanders. Jimmy Garoppolo, though, still, he didn't throw the ball much. They didn't have to because it was all on the ground. But is this also going to be something that may be a problem for anyone who has Jimmy Garoppolo, Emmanuel Sanders, George Kittle, but a huge plus for people who have Tevin Coleman? Moving forward, I mean, do you see this as being the trend moving forward the rest of the season with San Francisco? They're going to be a ground game team 75% of the time. Yeah,
I mean, I think Tevin Coleman's going to get his. If I have Tevin Coleman, which 95% of people do in ESPN leagues, I'm feeling pretty good. Jimmy Garoppolo, to me, yet again, it's this offense seems, you're going to get your limited at least this much. What can you do with that? Because like Jimmy Garoppolo, the last 2 weeks, 21, 22 throws. I mean, the only time he's gone above 25 was he went 27 in Tampa week 1, 32 against Pittsburgh, where even when he threw it 32 times, he only had 9.4 points because 2 of those were interceptions. and then 33 against the Rams where he had a 12.1. Jimmy Garoppolo is not going to be the guy to get you a lot of points. His most points came against Cincinnati, who we know are not a very good team
They have
year.
0 wins.
And they're trying to win. And I mean, their defense isn't terrible at giving up scores, except for that game. They gave up 3 to Jimmy Garoppolo. More so, that defense just gives up yards and yards and yards. I think that Jimmy Garoppolo is one of those where if you have a bye coming up, like let's say you have a Kirk Cousins situation and you need someone for the bye, Jimmy Garoppolo in that one. Actually, I might look away from Jimmy in that one because they have a Week 12 bye and they're playing the 49ers are playing Green Bay that weekend. Green Bay's got a tough defense. So, I mean, with Jimmy Garoppolo, it's really going to depend. This week could be a good week for him because they're going up against the Cardinals, who are not a very good defense. So, there's a possibility that they can give up points. To me, what interests me more is the other side of things, is Emmanuel Sanders. Because like I told you before we were coming in, I thought about trading for Emmanuel Sanders in the league you and I are in because he had 5 targets. He caught 4 of them. But how concerned, like, it's only one game. And of course, one game, you're not looking for someone to set the world on fire. Maybe this is him still getting acclimated to the system. But how much is Emmanuel Sanders' production going to be off of can he get into the end zone? Because if he wouldn't have gotten to the end zone, he would have only had 2.5 points in this game compared to the 8.5 he finished with.
Yeah, well, I think that's going to be the real big issue there is the fact that if Tevin Coleman's running as effectively as he has been, then there's no real reason for Jimmy Garoppolo to throw the football. And if he's not throwing the football, all the guys around him are hurting. Emmanuel Sanders, George Kittle, all the other wide receivers, Deebo Samuel. I mean, anybody else, they're obviously going to be largely affected by will Garoppolo throw the football. But because Coleman's been so effective, they're going to continue to run the football. That's what the 49ers have pretty much done all season long.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird, too, because the last game against the Panthers, the running backs, almost all of them got 11 carries each. Like, the only one that didn't was Raheem Mostert, who had 9 out of the 11 that Breida and Coleman had. The thing I'm going to say that's a good sign for Emmanuel Sanders moving forward might be something to watch because in fantasy, he is owned in, let's see, nope, that is Pettis I was looking at. He's owned at 86.4% of leagues. So there's an option for him to be out there. Let's see, Jimmy Garoppolo's 32.6. So if you're looking for a quarterback, Jimmy Garoppolo's actually out there, and he's actually on the downtrend of more people. About 5% of people are actually dropping him rather than gaining him, adding him in leagues. I look at it, and the thing that has to bode well, I know it's only game 1 with Emmanuel Sanders. What's got to bode well is that Kittle got 7 targets. Emmanuel Sanders got 5. So is this a telling sign? Was it just maybe the game plan, he got open more? Or do you think this is a telling sign of like, hey, Kittle's going to be the guy they go to most, but when it comes to the wide receivers now, Emmanuel Sanders is number 1. Like, he's going to be the guy to get the most targets after George Kittle.
I was going to say, I think your number 1 wide receiver, or your number 1 wide receiver, I'm just going to say it is George Kittle because he's a tight end.
But I mean,
he's a wide receiver.
Actual wide receiver.
Yeah, it would be Emmanuel Sanders. Okay. I mean, the rest of them are just kind of they're young. They're young. They're there. They don't do much, but they're there. Do you think, Ricky? My last question to you about Tevin Coleman before we move on is Tevin Coleman matchup proof? Is he one of those guys that you start him no matter what? Has he earned that yet in your mind?
You know, I mean, 4 games is a small sample size. I'm going to say not yet.
Okay.
And the reason being is Cleveland, he had a really nice game. The Rams, he had 12 points to me is manageable. Like, I'm happy with a fantasy owner at 12, but it's not world beater. I don't know with this Carolina thing if this is an anomaly or not. Like, obviously, he's not going to go out there and score 35, 36 points every game. But the thing that I look at coming up is, obviously, the 2 games against Arizona are key, Week 9, Week 11. Seattle, I think he'll be able to get his and manage that game because it's at home in San Fran. The big one for me is week 12 through week 14. You've got the Packers D, you've got Baltimore at Baltimore, and you've got New Orleans at New Orleans. Those are some big, big, big tough tests. And if he ain't getting it done, somebody else will.
Yeah, absolutely. That's completely right. Right now, Tevin Coleman, ride him if you've got him, because he has been...
Instead of smoke him if you got him, ride him if you got him.
Exactly. Thank you very much for getting that reference. But we are going to move on to our next segment, one of my favorite segments, and I'm going to throw it over to Ricky Widmer for Ricky's Roundtable. Ricky, take it away.
This is the third installment we've done with us this year, and we've done quarterbacks. We did bus. I think it was last week.
Yeah.
We did bus. This week, we're going to play a little start 'em, sit 'em, Brandon Swanson style, but only running backs.
Okay.
I'm going to throw some running backs your way. You tell me if you are going to start them or if you are going to sit them, and what's kind of your thought process moving forward. I'm going to actually pull up the schedule here because the website I am looking at for these does not have who they're playing.
That's not very helpful.
And I want to give you who they're playing. The first one I want to go with is a guy that we know near and dear to our hearts living here in Chicago. He's actually revenge game this week. It's not here in Chicago. It'll be at his team's home stadium. Jordan Howard of the Eagles. Start him, sit him. What's your thoughts? Revenge game against the Bears this week.
So, I think that if I own Jordan Howard, I've got to play him. And if you own Jordan Howard, most likely you have to. I mean, you have to probably play him. I would go with him. I wouldn't shoot for the stars. I understand. You look back to the Bears game. So it's a tale of two defenses that we've seen this season. So the Bears defense that we saw against the Saints, where, I mean, Latavius Murray was picking up 5-6 yards a carry, and everything was easy. Or last week, where one, the Chargers didn't run the ball that much, and two, they weren't effective doing it.
Or look at Josh Jacobs, what he was able to do.
I mean, he was outstanding.
Yep.
I only used one experience of bad defense, but thanks for bringing up another one.
The reason why is I just wanted to throw in there the thing with the Bears defense. They have allowed a running back to score a touchdown in 4 games in a row now.
That's why I was going to say if I have Jordan Howard, I'm starting Jordan Howard.
Okay. What about, let's go with, we've talked about him before, Melvin Gordon. The Chargers this week play the Packers in L.A. or in Carson City.
So I'm not starting Melvin Gordon. Okay. I don't like him this season. He's been bad, and the Chargers.
He's bad.
He's bad. The Chargers, and I understand. Like, that's been your guy. If he's on the field, you start him. Don't. It should be the better running back right now. That's Austin Eckler. I'm sitting Melvin Gordon against the Green Bay Packers.
Is it just because of the Eckler-Gordon thing? It's because of Eckler, or is it too because Green Bay's defense is kind of tough?
So Green Bay's defense is on being tough, especially lately. I mean, I think we saw what the Eagles were able to do against them. I'm not saying that the Chargers are going to do that. I just haven't really liked the running that Melvin Gordon's done. He hasn't really done a whole lot since he's been back. Austin Eckler, he's waiting right there in the wings. Eckler's actually been more productive, and I'm not necessarily saying just as a running back. He's been more productive as a receiver. Take the Tennessee game, for example, since Melvin Gordon has been back. So I would start Austin Eckler. I would sit Melvin Gordon.
So another one I'm going to go with. Mark Ingram, coming off the bye, Sunday Night Football, playing the Patriots. Patriots defense have been on a tear as of late. Well, really, the whole season, they've been on a tear.
I'm starting Mark Ingram. Nick Chubb had really good success against the Patriots last week. I think that
Brandon's like, not only was I starting him, I tried to trade him from you, Ricky. I tried to get him from you.
I did. I threw that out there. I threw that trade out. He didn't accept it. Can you believe him? He didn't accept my trade.
Sorry.
But so I would play Mark Ingram. Mark Ingram's a really tough runner. He's been really good this season. My one concern with Mark Ingram going to the Ravens, and which is why I didn't keep him in the offseason, was, is it going to be a Mark Ingram running night, or is it going to be a Lamar Jackson running night, or both? But I am going to start Mark Ingram against the New England Patriots. This may be one of those games, maybe it's not, where they lean on the ground game a little bit more because the Patriots have been so tough with their pass defense. I'm definitely going to go with Mark Ingram.
So the next guy, Arizona Cardinals. Chase Edwards already ruled out.
Yes.
David Johnson, questionable with his ankle injury.
But most likely won't play.
Kenyon Drake, what are you thinking? Cardinals get him from Miami. Is this going to be a rebirth for Kenyon Drake in Arizona this week? They are playing
the San Francisco
49ers on Thursday Night Football, so people will be hopefully listening to this with the game coming later tonight.
So, he may have a rebirth, but it's not going to be against the 49ers. It's just really unfortunate that he goes to the Cardinals and their first game is against the 49ers, who have a very, very tough defense. And I understand that Christian McCaffrey did score a touchdown against them this past week at 117 yards, but that's Christian McCaffrey. We're talking about Kenyon Drake, a guy who's good. He's got great skill sets, but he's not Christian McCaffrey. I think that the San Francisco 49ers defense is going to hold him down, probably similarly to how they held down the Los Angeles Rams when they played them in L.A. and they held down Malcolm Brown. I think we're going to be seeing similarities there. They're going to force Kyler Murray to throw the football.
So this one, he took about 10 carries in the Minnesota game 2 weeks ago. His running back, your running back, got injured last week, only had 7 carries, 25 yards, 3.8 points for the Lions. What do you think about Ty Johnson this week going at Oakland?
I don't have Ty Johnson.
Well, you have Kerryon Johnson.
I have Kerryon Johnson.
I said your running back got injured.
Yes, he did.
The Lions
and
your running back got injured, and he took over.
No, I'm sitting Ty Johnson because I don't have confidence that Ty Johnson's going to be the guy who gets most of the carries because didn't they have another guy like Trey Kayson or something like that was also getting a lot of the carries?
You talking about J.D. McKissick?
No. Mm-mm.
Oh, yeah. T.R.A. Carson.
Trey Carson.
He got 12 carries last week.
I'm not starting Ty Johnson. No way. This Lions team, with Kerryon Johnson out, Matt Stafford's going back to being what Matt Stafford has been.
Throw the ball
50 times a game. That's what he's going to be doing.
I got a dual one for you.
Yes.
A dual. And also, I'm looking at a CBS article to get these. One thing I will say, I'm not throwing them out there. They do have Carson as a sleeper this week against Oakland, possibly. But we're going to go with a dual one here. Both playing in the same game. Both playing against each other. AP Frank Gore, what's going on? Bills and Redskins. Adrian Peterson, Frank Gore. What are your thoughts about both of them? Start them, sit them.
Frank Gore, I'm going to start. I'm going to start him. I'm also going to throw out there, I'm going to start Devin Singletary as well. I think Devin Singletary, before we know it, is going to be taking over the starting role from Frank Gore. I do, because Frank Gore is going to be retiring like tomorrow. I mean, he's not going to keep going forever. And Singletary is too good to be held down
it's funny
for too long.
It's funny because on ESPN, like, I've got Singletary, so I'm looking at like what they're like putting down for their spin on it. And they're like, yeah, it's funny. Singletary is the most talented back in the backfield, but the Bills just haven't given him the go as starter over Frank Gore, who they're just sticking with.
You now have to remember, he was injured for 3 weeks. So I think that they're also...
3 weeks in the bye.
I think they're also trying to look at, easing him back in. Well, they eased him last week, and in the little bit of easing they did, he was very effective. Before the season ends, he'll be the starter. I do fully believe that. I'd start both of them, though, against Washington. And then with Adrian Peterson, I would start him too. Look at what the Eagles were able to do against the Buffalo Bills last week. I think the Bills are a much better defense than what they showed last week, but I'm still going to start AP and maybe not look for huge numbers, but look for very modest numbers against Buffalo.
He had 10.3 10.3 against Minnesota last week.
And that's really pretty good against Minnesota's defense. Vaunted run defense for sure. So
Really,
I would start AP too.
Ever since he's been getting the bulk of the carries, which has been week 6, 13.6 against Miami, 6.1 against San Fran, 10.3 against Minnesota.
And in my other league, the one that's not ours, obviously, I have to start Adrian Peterson. So I'm really hoping for good things.
Last one I'm going to throw out there for you. And this one, CBS Sports has as their only bust alert of the week. He had a monstrous game last week. His coach decided not to use him very, 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 very late in the game, which would have set up an easier field goal for the kicker. David Montgomery against the Eagles. Do you expect the type of game you saw last week where he had 135 yards on 27 carries and 4 catches? Or is David Montgomery going to come back down to earth this week against the Eagles on Sunday?
So I don't believe that he's going to have 120 yards against the Eagles, but I would start him. I'm going against what everyone else is saying.
Everyone is like sitting him.
I would start him for the fact that I believe the volume is going to be there for him. I think the Bears are still going
carries?
20. I think 20 carries is reasonable that he might get against because I understand that the Eagles have been a team they're a little softer through the air, but I really think that the Bears need to stay balanced. Matt Nagy, Mr. he was really on his high horse, and I didn't like that the other day in his press conference. You lost the game. Could you have done more? Yes, you could have, and you're not admitting to it. Just fess up that you've been a screw up all season long. I'm not upset, but I'm over it. I would still say start Montgomery though. I think he gets 20 carries. I think the Bears try and stay balanced on offense. 20 carries, I could see 80 yards. If he adds a score, that'd be outstanding.
I'll tell you this, he ain't getting in the end zone. And the reason why I say that, the Eagles defense has only given up 4 touchdowns to running backs all year. Do you want to know their names? Do you want to know their names in order of...
Well, they gave up a one to a running back last week, Devin Singletary. Not on the ground, but he ran it. He got in there.
On the ground.
I know.
These are on the ground because the fantasy numbers put it up. But on the ground... The only people to get a touchdown, week 4, the Lions, I'm assuming it's Kerryon Johnson because it was week 4. Week 3 was that. Week 4 at Green Bay, Aaron Jones, he got in. Week 6, Dalvin Cook, he got in the end zone. Week 7, Ezekiel Elliott. The only 4 guys to rush a ball into the end zone. Now, the good thing is that you look at David Montgomery and, hey, maybe he can get that pass and do what Devin Singletary did. But Devin Singletary, from what I remember, that was not some easy, walk it in. That was like a 28-yard, bust that he had on that catch out of the backfield. Am I wrong?
I can't remember how long it was, but it was. I know it was definitely a catch out of the backfield. One of my things is why I think that David Montgomery could be a guy
28-yard touchdown. So it wasn't like anything it's like a 5-yard score. 28 yards is impressive, especially for a running back to do that through the air.
Why I think that he could be a running back to do it. He's so shifty. He's so shifty. He's so quick. He can cut on a dime. I really think that David Montgomery, if the Bears give him the opportunity, he's a guy that you want to have in your fantasy lineup every week. And I guess part of my problem is that I am a little biased, and I have him in my fantasy lineup every week because I have him, again, in my other league, and have to roll with him because I'm thin at running back. And Todd Gurley's on a bye this week, and I've really been upset with Todd Gurley too. So
last one I'm going to throw out there just for you.
Yeah.
Just for you because he's on the list. He's one of your running backs in our league. Carlos Hyde, what are you thinking?
So... the matchup numbers...
He's also on my personal team.
The matchup numbers don't look bad when you look at Houston's run defense. Not great. I think they're, 17 or something against the run.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Jacksonville's. He's on Houston. Jacksonville's run defense is like 19 or 17 against the run. And the Jets, obviously, Le'Veon Bell wasn't able to do much of anything, but neither were the Jets against Jacksonville last week for the most part. I think, though, again, Carlos Hyde, a guy who so much volume, he had 9 points against the Jacksonville Jaguars earlier in the season. He gets a lot of volume. I don't expect that this is going to be a game that gets out of hand for Houston. At least I don't expect them to be down by a lot or anything in this game. So I think that we're going to see consistent carries from Carlos Hyde. I'd put him in the starting lineup.
Okay. And that's Ricky's. That's all I've got for you, Brandon. That's all I have.
And that's Ricky's Roundtable for this week. Ricky, thanks so much.
I love doing it.
Now I'm going to welcome you back in for our third segment.
It's like I left and came back, man.
So, final segment before we get into the overall starts and sits for week 9. It's Kyle Allen.
Oh, we were going to do this one. Okay. I was getting my starts and sits ready, but yeah,
It's
I
Kyle
can
Allen.
do this. Okay.
It's Kyle Allen. I hope you're still good.
No, I'm good.
You don't want to
I'm
leave,
good.
do you?
No, I didn't know we were. So I thought we were replacing Kyle Allen with the Ricky's Roundtable, but yeah, no, I'm cool talking about Kyle Allen.
No, we're not.
Brandon's like, this is
We're
my show,
not.
man. We're going to do this.
So, Kyle Allen just had his first loss last week. It was rough.
Yeah, it was a heartbreaker.
He completed 51% of his passes. That's really outstanding. But
Yeah, but
his
3 of them were to the other team.
Yeah. Well, he still completed it. His passer rating not good though. 28.9. Really, really terrible. But 158 yards, no TDs, and like you said, 3 picks. But before that, he had thrown 7 touchdowns, no interceptions, and he'd won all of the games that he had started. Kyle Allen. This is a guy that has really been effective. Ricky, is this a guy that would make it into your starting lineup? If our listeners, if our viewers have him, should he be making it into their starting lineup?
Now, I'm going to say no, only because, first off, the thing that's tricky about him is he's only owned in 6% of leagues. So there's not a lot of teams that have Kyle Allen, which means if you need a quarterback or you're getting one on the bye, like, for example, Kirk Cousins, Phillip Rivers, a lot of people, though, have their backup. Let's say your backup, though, was Matt Ryan. Oh, shoot, he's injured. What if it was, for example, Andy Dalton? Just throwing it out there. Oh, he's benched. What am I going to do? Kyle Allen, to me, is very hit or miss fantasy-wise because he came out like a gangbuster in that first game against the Cardinals. Then, fantasy-wise, like I know non-fantasy-wise, no one said it was a bad game. Fantasy-wise, he had a bad game against the Houston Texans where, yeah, he had 232 yards, but he fumbled the ball 3 times in that game. Only had 3.3 points. Jacksonville, 11.6. You need some more out of your quarterback. Tampa Bay was all right, 17.4. It's not the end of the world. And then this one where he only had 0.3 points. If your league doesn't do the 0.3, he had 0 for you in this game. Coming up, I mean, Tennessee could be a good matchup. Atlanta could be a good matchup week 11. Washington, always a good matchup week 13. That Green Bay, New Orleans, I would not start him during. But the big thing that I worry about with Kyle Allen is that, and this is kind of a greater question outside of fantasy too, that I wanted to ask you is, with the Carolina Panthers, when Cam Newton is ready to go, should they go to him? Should they go to Cam Newton and bench Kyle Allen, or before this game, ride the hot hand? Because if I'm not mistaken, the 49er game is his only loss since stepping in, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah. So I know fantasy, a lot of people may be saying, well, guys, no one's going to start Kyle Allen. That's fine. But even on top of that, football in general, because we don't have a football podcast right now for MVP as we speak, should the Panthers even go with Cam Newton this year at all, or just sit him the rest of the year and say, Kyle Allen, this is your season?
I really would have to say that they should sit Cam Newton. Even if he's healthy, I would keep Cam on the bench. In my opinion, Cam hasn't been right for a while. And that's not with his foot injury. It is a foot, right?
Yeah. I think so.
Foot injury.
I'll double check.
He just hasn't looked right. Even in the first 2 games of the season against the Rams and against the Bucks, he didn't look right. He did not look good.
Left foot.
Yeah. I don't know if it's still a problem with his shoulder, but he was skipping passes. He wasn't sharp. I mean, his quarterback rating was 72 and 70 in the 2 games that he played this season.
Yeah.
He had a completion percentage in the Rams game, 65%. The Bucks, 49% under 50. No touchdowns, 1 interception. That's not Cam Newton. That's not the Cam Newton that we have remembered and seen and expect. Kyle Allen, right now, provides a better opportunity for the Carolina Panthers to get wins than does Cam Newton.
No, I'm exactly the same. I feel the same, where it's like, with Cam Newton, I'd just be like, hey, you get right, Kyle Allen's got this season. Because the thing you got to look at with this team is, like I said, the upcoming schedule for this team after week 9, after Tennessee, where we know Kyle Allen's getting the start this week against Tennessee. Afterwards, at Green Bay, which I know you say they haven't been as good lately, they're still a good defense that can terrorize a quarterback if given the chance. Those corners can intercept balls all day if given the chance also, which Cam could give them that option to. New Orleans week 12, that's going to be a tough matchup. You also get New Orleans week 17 as well. And then you get Seattle, who's always tough week 15. So it's like, I almost look at this and go, with the matchups left, you're in a tricky situation right now if you are the Carolina Panthers, because as I pull up the standings, and this is one of the most interesting things I think I'm going to look at the rest of the year. If you look at the teams outside of the playoffs right now, the Rams only have 3 losses. The Panthers only have 3 losses. The Lions only have 3 losses and a tie. So, I mean, there's a lot of teams going to be jockeying for position in these playoff races. And you look at New Orleans, yeah, they're getting Drew Brees back. Yeah, they're going on the bye. But like I said, New Orleans has a gauntlet coming up after this bye. They've got Atlanta, which they'll probably win because Atlanta's been bad this year. But like Tampa could steal a game from them. Carolina's going to be a big one. San Francisco week 14. Indy, both these teams have to play Indy late, and then Carolina week 17. So, I mean, if Carolina right now can win games like they have been, steal 2 against the Saints, they're right in this. They could possibly knock the Saints out of a playoff spot if they keep forward. That's why it's like, I always relate it to what they say when you're at the poker table. Never walk away when you're riding a heater, man. Don't walk away the guy when you're riding the heater. I know you're coming off of a loss where people would say, Ricky, this analogy doesn't fit. But do you have a winning record? Are you still in the race? Because I would how many times do we see coaches overthink things in a game or in a season, make a decision they shouldn't? Like, for example, today, I saw in my notifications, phone popped up that for the World Series, Kurt Suzuki is not going to be playing Game 7. They're going to be going with, I can't remember who it was, a different catcher.
Yan Gomes?
Yan Gomes. Yan Gomes is going to catch Scherzer in Game 7. My first thought was, all right, unless it's like a Lester Dave Ross situation where that's his personal catcher, I almost look at that and go, whatever got you here. Just go with what you get. Go with what got you here.
Yan Gomes was in the game last night.
Okay.
I'm trying. I'm not trying to completely break down your thought and comment here.
My main point is ride Kyle Allen, not Colin Allen. Kyle Allen, because I feel like if they throw Newton in there, it could throw a wrench into this season. And then if it falls apart, it's like, well, we shouldn't have made that. Hindsight's always 20/20. Don't be in that situation.
And just to let you know, Kurt Suzuki was hurt.
Okay.
That's why. I'm just saying.
I'm just saying I saw the notification. They just said out. They didn't say with an injury. ESPN's got to do better with that stuff. I mean, come on. They have how many people on staff?
Yeah, I know, but ESPN's been failing for years, so let's just be honest about it. Yeah, I really think that Kyle Allen, I think he gives you the best chance to win, and I think one bad game against a really good 49ers defense isn't the end of the world. I think that look at the good games that Kyle Allen has played. I mean, he played a very good game against the Cardinals to start. All right, not the toughest opponent. I get it, but still, he played a good game, an error-free game against the Texans. That's huge. An error-free game, no interceptions, no touchdowns,
3 fumbles though.
But did he lose any of them?
That's what it said on fantasy. On fantasy, it said he had 3 fumbles.
But did he lose them?
I'm just telling you, on the fantasy, when you look at it, it says 3 fumbles accredited to his name.
I'm just trying to go by things that he lost.
Yeah.
Because you can fumble and not lose the fumble.
Well, it just said fumble. So I'm assuming they lost it, but I would have to check the box score.
Sure. The Jaguars, he no interceptions. Buccaneers, no interceptions. The Buccaneer game was a very good game for him as well. So I just think that there's been so many good.
Yep, Kyle Allen fumbled it 3 times, lost all 3 of them.
Okay, never mind then. So he did lose all 3 of those, but they still won.
Yeah, they did 16-10, and that was the game. That was the game where I texted you. Was it? No, Deshaun Watson came back in the 4th. That was one where I'm like, bad week from my guy. Bad week from Deshaun Watson this week. It might have been the week after that where I texted you, where I was like, should I be looking to deal Deshaun Watson? Like, should I be looking to deal him? Because he hasn't been playing good. And then, 52-32 against the Falcons.
And I know that some people probably are also thinking, Brandon, Ricky, it's not necessarily all Kyle Allen. It's a lot of Christian McCaffrey. You're not wrong. You're not wrong, and we don't forget about him. But I'm just saying that from the quarterback perspective, Kyle Allen is still giving your team a great opportunity to win every week. I don't think that, okay, you have Kyle Allen in there. Nope. They're going to stack the box because, they know he can't throw anything. That's not the case. That's the case with Josh Rosen, but that's not the case with Kyle Allen. So I really think that what Ricky and I have talked about here, Kyle Allen is the guy for the Carolina Panthers for the foreseeable future and certainly for the rest of this season.
No, you're absolutely correct. And if they go to Cam Newton, that's going to be a huge mistake.
I think so too. Ricky, let's move along into the final topic here today. And of course, it is stardom, sit-em for week 9 in the NFL. And Ricky, you said surprise you, so I'm going to go with sits.
You know what? With sits, as it's funny, I was trying to gauge where you were going. I'm going to go with my first one is, I don't know how many people are going to start him this week, but I would not. Kyler Murray. It's an obvious sit for me. Going against San Fran, the last 2 games have kind of come down to earth from where he's been at, where his lowest games up until week 7 were 16 and 17 points. 7 points against the Giants, 10 points last week against the Saints. Has not had a touchdown since his 3-touchdown game against the Atlanta Falcons week 6. If you start Kyle Murray this week against the 49ers, it's like the South Park meme. You're only going to have a bad time. So I would sit him and have a good time in fantasy.
Well, the first sit that I'm going to go with has got to be Mike Williams from the LA Chargers. He's just not getting much his way, and he's not getting touchdowns. He's supposed to be this red zone target, but when the Chargers have been in the red zone, which is not often, they've looked a lot to Hunter Henry, who is now back and healthy, and they've also looked at their number 1 guy, whose name is escaping me right now. I don't know why. Allen, wide receiver.
Robinson?
No,
You say Allen, I think
No.
Robinson.
No.
I'm like, he's
Gosh,
not talking about the Bears.
I don't know what the heck's wrong with me.
team?
I can't. The Chargers.
Keenan Allen?
Thank you. Keenan Allen. I couldn't. I don't know why I blanked, and I blanked hard
Well, I was
on
so
Keenan Allen.
The problem was, here's the thing. I should have probably been listening better to you.
Ricky wasn't listening.
I was getting my next kind of like question
Ricky
up.
never listens. I just want you guys to know that. So if you become a patron, again, head over to patreon.com/most valuable podcast. If you ever become a patron, Ricky doesn't listen to you.
Do listen.
He won't listen to you. He appreciates you. He can be your buddy. Ricky and I are friends. He still doesn't give a crap what I have to say. Never has.
I listen. It's just this time I was it's sometimes where it's like when I have a question, I really think about it like, should, because then I start thinking about should I do that? I'll probably ask it. And then it's like, oh shit, he asked me a question. I wasn't thinking. I'm like the kid in the back of the class where it's like, I'm daydreaming. Hey Ricky, what's the answer to this? Oh fuck, they called on me. Oh, what? Maybe if I sit here really still, they'll just imagine that I'm not here.
So I'll say it again.
Keenan Allen.
My sit is Mike Williams.
Okay.
Mike Williams, he hasn't been getting the red zone looks. He hasn't been getting the touchdowns. And he's just not getting enough balls thrown his way right now. And the Chargers, they're just not good.
Well, I got a question for you. Speaking of the Chargers.
Sure.
I have 2 quarterbacks, right?
Yep.
On my fantasy team.
Yes.
Should I start Phillip Rivers against the Packers, Sam Darnold against the Dolphins? Because part of me goes, man, that Miami team not good. That Packer defense, pretty good. Better than the Dolphins.
But I also think that Phillip Rivers and the Chargers are going to have to be throwing a lot. Sam Darnold, it may be a Le'Veon type of day.
You think so?
Yes.
See, that's one where it's like, I am sitting there.
Don't overthink it. Don't overthink it.
Part of me just wants to say Sam Darnold because Miami's bad.
But
That's
also,
what part of me wants
but
to
take
do.
a look at it though. Miami, they're being somewhat competitive. They were competitive on Monday Night Football. They lost,
Which
but
could
they're
bode
still
well for
competitive.
throwing. Like, I look at it and it's like Pittsburgh, 2 touchdowns. Like, every single team, it's like Baltimore had 6 passing touchdowns against the Dolphins week 1. Every single game the Dolphins have played, they've given up at least 2. They've given up exactly 2 touchdowns to opposing quarterbacks. Tom Brady, Dak Prescott, Phillip Rivers, Washington, whoever started that game because it's a revolving door right now. Josh Allen, Mason Rudolph, every single one of them. Nixon hands out here. They've all had 2 touchdowns in their games. So part of me is leaning Sam Darnold. I just wanted to put that out into the open air because, like last week, I would have won by more. I did win last week, which I gotta say, I have done for the first. I didn't think I was gonna accomplish this feat, but then when I saw the final score, like you texted me and you're like, "You're gonna win this game," and I went, "Huh?" I played Mark Ingram on the bye because I had to. I even got a zero burger from Brandon Cooks, who was injured, concussion protocol, and I still won my Week 8 game. The game that I knew I was going to lose all year, I won.
So I texted our commissioner, and I said, "So are there warnings for people who are playing people injured in their lineup if they can avoid it?" He never got back to me.
What do you mean?
Your opponent played Matt Ryan and David Johnson. They were both ruled out earlier in the week.
I know.
He could have played Tom Brady.
But he didn't.
But I'm just saying he could have.
No, he could have. You're right.
But he didn't. But that's what frustrates me as a fantasy player is that, yes, I understand. I don't care about your team. I care about you beating you because I'm in the same division as you.
Great fantasy football ethics question. And for our commissioners out there, we'll talk about it right now. You're a commissioner. Joe Schmo didn't check his lineup, left so-and-so and so-and-so who were injured, could have played the other. Do you leave it as is, or do you say, you know what? I'll take it. We'll switch the other 2 in because they're on your team already. Because if that happened to me, if I was on the other side thinking I won and then lost, I'd be furious. I'd be furious because there's a reason why there's a deadline to set your lineup.
I guess
that's what I think.
So what is your thinking?
My thinking is there's a deadline to set the lineup for a reason. If you accidentally leave it in, you leave it in. Because it's happened to me before where I've forgotten to check. Shit, he's not playing today. Or I'm doing a podcast Sunday morning, didn't get the Adam Schefter notification. Well, shit, he didn't play. He's in my starting lineup. Or fuck, I got to now find someone on Sunday Night Football to try to start.
So I have no problem if someone is a game time decision all the way up until the game, and you don't know, and they don't know, and it's if he feels good in pregame warmups and stuff like that. Okay.
Like Keenan Allen was against the Bears, and I just sat him.
Yes.
Yeah.
But everyone knew that Matt Ryan and David Johnson were not going to play on Saturday day. Saturday day.
There's a deadline for a reason.
You have 24 hours to change that lineup.
My question for you, were you texting the commissioner to see if...
not to change anything, but
to penalize the person.
They should be getting a warning. Those are the types of people we should kick their ass out of the league because I'm done with them.
I misinterpreted that. I misinterpreted as you saying like, "Hey, they didn't check it in time." Like
no. My text to the commissioner went Sunday night after I was pissed that you were going to win.
I'll ask you this: if you're a commissioner and if someone, let's say, 12-10 texts you and goes, fuck, I was going to change my lineup just now.
No, it's late.
You would just say no?
It's late.
Yeah, that's what my opinion would be.
It's late.
So
I'm sorry.
I'm glad.
But if it was 11:50 and you needed me as the commissioner to put your lineup in for you, sure.
Okay.
12:10, you're late.
So if you were the commissioner of my league and I texted you at 11:55, hey, Brandon, here's my starting lineup, you'd put it in for me?
I would.
Hey, Brandon, I'm unable. Here's my starting lineup. You would put it in.
I would do my best if I could, yes.
If you couldn't, what would, like...
If I couldn't, this is it's on you.
Okay, all right.
If I couldn't, it's on you.
If you couldn't, it's like, well, you're shit out of luck.
Yes.
Okay. Or is it like, okay, you texted me it. It's in record, like in writing form. I'll just go and change it after the fact. And then text the guy
I
hey,
don't think I could change it after the fact, but I think it would almost be
just
text your opponent, okay, blah blah blah, whatever. Me. I would be willing to do that
because what you could do is you could just add the points or whatever.
If it was coming in with enough time, 11:55 might be a little tight, but if it was 11:45, certainly.
Okay. Ethics question here on the podcast.
Let's get to your final sit.
My final sit, I was going to say maybe Phillip Rivers. That was why I asked the question, because he's going up against Green Bay and why I asked the Sam Darnold, Phillip Rivers question.
Gotcha. All right. Well, my final sit's going to be Sony Michel. I don't think he's going to have success against the Baltimore Ravens.
So another guy on my personal team that I got to think about.
Yeah, I would not be playing Sony Michel. I would not be. All right, Ricky, how about some starts?
So for my first start, I'm not going to go with a guy who's a must start. I'm going to go with a guy who's possibly a sleeper pick in a game. And it's not because of what he's going to do, because I feel like this front seven that he's playing can get to him. But the team that he's playing gives up a lot of points to receivers, which if he's throwing touchdowns to receivers, bodes well for him. I'm going to go on a ledge here. This is a big sleeper ledge. I'm probably going to fall off of it. You ready? Mitch Trubisky against the Eagles. Could have not saying a big day, but could have a day kind of like that Washington, maybe a little less. Maybe like instead of 7-20, like he had a good game against New Orleans, maybe like a 17-point game. Something you haven't seen from Mitch in quite a while. Mitch could have a good game this week. He's not a starter for sure, but he's slipping in there as Ricky's sleeper of the week.
All right. Well,
you're like, I don't know how to judge this one.
I'd be pretty thrilled if he did that well this week.
I don't know how to judge this one, Ricky.
My first start of the week is going to be Tyrell Williams, and with that, I'm also going to say Derek Carr. They're going against the Lions. The Lions gave up over 300 yards and 4 TDs to Daniel Jones. And Darius Slayton had 50 yards and 2 touchdowns. I think that it's going to be a big week for Raiders players really all across the board. Well, Start the Raiders if you got them.
I'll double down on that. Josh Jacobs. And the reason why is I know that New York didn't have much success on the ground. Well, they don't really have a running back. Look at what Dalvin Cook did in Week 7 to that team. Look at what Green Bay was able to do. Yeah, they didn't get into the end zone, but they still had 151 yards with their running backs. Before that, KC got into the end zone 3 times. Philly got into the end zone once. The Chargers got in once. Should have got in again. That game pisses me off to this day because that was a week in fantasy I think I lost. Did I win? No, I lost.
You've lost so many.
Only 2 on the year. But, I mean, I look at Josh Jacobs and I go, hey, you know what? Start him if you got him because he's going to do some great things against the Lions defense this week.
And then I've got 2 final starts. First one, Allen Robinson for the Chicago Bears. If Mitch is going to be throwing the football and if he's going to have any success, it's going to be with Allen Robinson catching the football. And this year, Philly's defense, especially their secondary, has been bad. They've had injuries. I think that Allen Robinson could have a big day against Philly. And also, it's a guy who had a really big day the first time he played this team, Michael Gallup, going up against the New York Giants. He had over 150 yards the first time. I think that we're looking for another 100-yard day, maybe a touchdown, possibly 2 for Michael Gallup.
I got one more running back-wise. If you're in a very tight league and you need a flex option or maybe even an RB2, but more so looking at that flex option, I would take a look at Alexander Madison.
Yeah.
And the reason why is 6.4 in that game against Washington, not bad for him. If he gets a touchdown, can bolster him up. He's going to get some carries against the KC team that Dalvin Cook will get his. Madison will be there to probably pick up some scraps. And if he gets a touchdown, that bodes well for you in fantasy. So if you're looking for a fringe guy for that flex and Madison's there, go ahead and play him because KC, not that great against the running backs this year.
It's very true. They have not been very good against the run. And last week was proof with Aaron Jones. Ooh, man, it wasn't even against the run. It was in the screen game. He torched him, and I played against him. Ricky, any final thoughts before we wrap things up today?
Gonna look at my personal team to see if I have any questions. So, running back-wise this week, you're saying I should put in Devin Singletary over. So, here, I'll ask you this. Marlon Mack is going to start for me.
Yes.
I got 2 other spots. I've got, first off, because I've got Kupp and Thomas on the bye, in my flex spot, I've got running back. So 2 running back spots to fill. Sony Michel, Austin Eckler, Devin Singletary, Carlos Hyde. Because, let's be honest, Damian Williams, I don't even know why he's still on my team.
Yeah, I would go with Devin Singletary. I'd go with Devin Singletary and Carlos Hyde.
Okay. Going against the 2 guys I started last week in Eckler and Michelle. Interesting. Because that's the big debate in my personal league that I'm going to have this week because I got to play Chark because Thomas is on the bye, and then my flex opened up because Cooper Kupp is on the bye.
And if you're not feeling Carlos Hyde, I would go with Eckler. Okay. I would definitely make sure that you're sitting Sony, though. I just don't see him having a good day.
Because he had how many last week? Let's see. In this league that I'm in, he had, where is it?
7?
Yep, 7. He had 21 carries for 74 yards after, 18, 10, and 22. So we'll see. But that's the decision I have to make because Singletary, if he ain't getting the bulk of the carries, he's a touchdown or bust candidate.
Well, I think he gets the bulk of the carries this week.
Brandon's like, he's going to start soon. I'm promising you guys.
I feel good about it. I feel good about it. He's too talented to not. All right. Well, that is going to wrap it up for us today on the podcast. Thank you so much for watching and listening. We very much appreciate it, and we had a great time. We hope that you did too, and that you learned something, that you're able to take it away and win in your personal leagues. We are really hoping that we are making it easier for you to decide, because fantasy football, it's a mind game, folks. It's a mind game. It's a nasty deal, that's for sure. But again, make sure you go over to patreon.com/mostvaluablepodcast and help support the podcast. Just $1 a month. Just $1. $1. I mean, we're not even talking a Dunkin' Donuts drink. $1. That's all. That's all. To support what we're doing here on the podcast, we really would appreciate, we really would love to have your support. Again, thank you so much for watching and listening. That is going to wrap it up for us. For Ricky Widmer, I'm Brandon Swanson saying so long, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your week and enjoy Week 9 in the NFL. And hopefully the Astros won. I really hope the Astros won. So long, everybody.